That brings us to item number 11, which is our superintendent's report, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Board members, as has been mentioned twice already tonight, our teachers are returning Wednesday with students to follow the next week. For us to be prepared, it's taken the work of each and every individual, every department, so I would like to pause to celebrate the work of our facilities team, our technology team. Our transportation department was understaffed by 20 when the school year ended, but they are 100% staffed thanks to innovation of recruitment by Dave Wiseman and his team, so we celebrate the work of each and every one of them. Our security team has been working with our administrators to train and doing lots of work to make sure that we are ready for the new handbook for disciplinary codes. Our instructional department has done so much professional development for a variety of people and also oversaw lots of camps, such as some are Read to Camp, some are Read to Succeed camp. And then, of course, we have to look towards HR because all the hiring that we have done throughout the course of the summer. So I'll pause to say thank you to each and every department. The principals have been involved, all the administrators. Every department has contributed to our success to be ready to start off the school year of 2018-19 with great success. So I tip my hat to them tonight. I think that warrants a round of applause. So let's give that to them because I think that's truly celebratory. I am delighted to make some introductions this evening. I say these names, I would like for them to stand where they're seated so that we can get a photograph of the group together. We have had the pleasure of hiring some highly caliber people to lead the schools and have responsibilities at the district level. I'd like to first introduce you to Ms. Denise Barth, our new principal from Chapin Intermediate School, who joins us from another district with great experience as a principal and is also the reigning elementary principal of the year for the state of South Carolina. So Ms. Barth, we welcome you to School District 5. If we'll hold our applause until I've said everyone, that way we can get everyone coordinate a round of applause together. Next, I welcome our new principal to Irmo High School, Dr. Robin Hardy. Dr. Hardy joins us from a neighboring district as a very seasoned, successful principal and is seen as an instructional leader across the state. So Dr. Hardy, we welcome you to School District 5 and the leadership that you're offering to Irmo High School. Next is a name that you all know very well. We have moved from one school to another. Mr. Jess Hutchison has moved from Crossroads Intermediate to Chapin Elementary School to start a brand new experience of working with younger learners and already has some great stories to share of some experiences he's already had thus far. So Mr. Hutchison has hit the ground running, but for a course of a short period of time had his foot in two worlds at once of both Crossroads because of his care for Crossroads Intermediate, but also preparing for Chapin Elementary. So, Mr. Hutchison, we appreciate you. Next is another award winner, our Elementary Assistant Principal of the Year. Ms. Kelly Reese is now our new principal for Lake Murray Elementary School. We celebrate Ms. Reese's leadership. She is well known at Lake Murray and even held a very successful community event over the weekend, making sure that the building had spruced up and lots of beautification going on. So Ms. Reese and her team are ready to get a successful year underway. I think everyone in the country knows our new Director of Secondary Education, but in the event that we don't know, our Director of Secondary Education is none other than the award-winning National Principal of the Year for NASSP, Dr. Akil Ross, who has moved from Chapin High School into the district level and has balanced his responsibilities as the Principal of the Year, along with learning the role of Director of Secondary Education in the most balanced way. So, Dr. Ross, we welcome you to the system level and know that you're going to have great impact on all of our secondary schools. Next up is probably our most recent hire. He could probably tell us the hours that he's been employed since our meeting last Monday. We welcome our new principal to Crossroads Intermediate School, Mr. Justin Thomas. Justin, of course, has had experience at both Dutch Fork Middle School and also Dutch Fork High School. So his introduction to Crossroads last Monday was truly a successful event. We think all faculty and staff were accounted for. They could not wait to meet Mr. Thomas. And since then, I believe he's hit the ground running and even has a T-shirt to show that he's already on staff. So Mr. Thomas, we celebrate and welcome you to Crossroads. And then last but not least for this evening, we welcome Shannon Wiley to the principalship at Irmo Elementary School. Shannon, of course, has been at Irmo Elementary as an assistant principal for several years now. She knows the faculty and staff very well. She appreciates and upholds a partnership with the University of South Carolina through their Professional Development School Association. And Shannon has a great instructional vision for Irmo to build upon the strong history of success, but make sure that the future is just as exciting and bright as the past has been. So if I could ask that whole cohort to please stand, we're going to get a group picture, and let's give these folks a round of applause. not having photo bombers, huh? Congratulations to these leaders. We look forward to a year of dynamic leadership under their careful supervision. Our first report of two this evening has already been alluded to a little earlier. Mr. Giuliano, as Chief Instructional Officer, has coordinated and worked with Dr. Summerall on our Read to Succeed camp. So tonight he's going to come forward to give to our board and our community an update regarding our Read to Succeed efforts that we just completed for the summer a few weeks ago. Mr. Giuliano.
Thank you, Dr. Melton. Board members, I'd like to report on Read to Succeed, our summer reading camp, which Dr. Melton mentioned just concluded a few weeks ago. Act 284, Read to Succeed. This year was the first year that required mandatory retention for summer reading camps across the state of South Carolina. So Read to Succeed has been enacted for a few years. Like we mentioned before, our summer reading camp's been taking place for about 4 years, but this is the first year that mandatory retention actually went into effect for third grade students. Of that mandatory retention, there are good cause exemptions. So there are 7 good cause exemptions, which would be a way for students not to be retained into third grade and that they could be promoted to 4th grade. So here in School District 5, we had 59 students that were identified as not met 1 in reading, which is the lowest summative level of the SC Ready assessment. And of those 59 students, 58 of them qualified for a good cause exemption. So 58 of them were promoted to the 4th grade. For our summer reading camp, the camp lasted 5 weeks. So it's a 5-week intensive camp. And of those 5 weeks, they're 4 days a week, 6 hours a day. So very high-packed instruction in that time during the summer reading camps. They are certainly trying to make sure that, number one, our purpose and our goal is to ensure that our students are ready for success entering the next school year. A lot of times you see that summer slide, which goes into effect over the summer where students will take a dip when they come back in the school year. The summer reading camp really helps make sure and ensure that our students are prepared for the next grade level as they enter the next school year. We also want to make sure that our students are excited about reading and have that love and that joy instilled in them so they can start the school year with success. So those are the 2 main goals of our camp. Our camp had a total of 69 students. So we had students that were identified through Read to Succeed, and then also other students that we locally identified, because what we did is we included 2nd and 3rd graders. So rising 3rd and 4th graders, but we included both grade levels so we could begin working with some of our 2nd grade students to help them so they can come back into their 3rd grade school year ready to learn and to be successful. So we certainly wanted to expand our camp into 3rd and 2nd grade this year. The United Way of the Midlands has been a tremendous partner for us. They awarded us a grant of $7,000 this school year, and as Ms. Goggins mentioned earlier, on average for 4 years, $7,800 that they have averaged per year. They have been a wonderful partner for us and our students. That awarded us the opportunity to have 2 family celebrations where we bring all the families of the students in before the camp to give them an orientation and to welcome them, and so they're comfortable with the teachers and the camp so they can have a positive experience. And then at the end of the camp, we have a post-camp celebration where we celebrate the learning that's taken place, and each student has a role in that celebration. And then we have dinner as a family of summer reading camp students and their families after that. So 2 great celebrations that the United Way offers us through their grant. We also gave each student, so 69 students received a backpack, which has a lifetime warranty, and that backpack was filled with 50 books that they could take home and keep at their house. Of those 50 books, 45 of them they self-selected. So they had an opportunity to go through the books and, like a book fair, and pick out the ones that were most interested to them so they could take those home and enjoy that reading. We have to find literature that they are interested to read so they can be successful. So, of course, we pick out high-quality literature and then give them the opportunity to self-select. So those books were sent home. And then also, in the mail, every month, they will get a subscription to Ranger Rick magazine, which is an educational magazine, so they'll be able to continue their learning. And that joy of receiving something in the mail as a student, as a kid, you love getting things in the mail with your name on it, not your parents' name, but your name on it. So they'll get that in the mail for a full year. And then we also were able to give them attendance incentives. So if they went to the camp so many days and they were entered into a drawing, so they received a gift certificate to a local bookstore that they could go and spend and purchase other additional books with that gift certificate. So they have been partnering with us since 2015, and I know we gave them a round of applause earlier, but if I could, just one more time, offer up the thanks and the gratitude to the United Way of the Midlands, but also Dr. Sally Sumrall for all the hard work and effort that they have provided for our students in District 5. And with that, Dr. Melton, if the board has any questions, I'd be welcome to take those now.
Ms. Hammond.
Can you hear me? Thank you. I have just several questions, but I'd really love to know, in the accountability model that has 3 main areas, I know some of these, but I think for the public's sake and parents, it'd be good to, for the achievement, growth, and under academic indicators, I think those are just probably like a standardized test.
Yeah.
And then under school quality indicators, student engagement survey, is that something like what they are involved in, like student council or clubs? I was just trying to see how that's measured.
Mr. Giuliano, if I may interrupt, Ms. Hammond, you are a step ahead of us. You're thinking about that already. Mr. Holden has that presentation primed and ready to answer those questions.
Okay.
So hold that question. Mr. Holden has heard the preview of what's to come, but I'm hoping that he'll be able to answer those questions for you momentarily.
Well, maybe this is one you could say, and,
Sure.
and I apologize for asking that,
okay.
and you were not ready. Are these things, Dr. Melton, that even after the state passes this, these indicators, do each of the individual districts get to sort of set the way they measure it, or are you giving? Oh, I'm giving you a bad question.
Now, there is no such thing as a bad question, Ms. Hammond, but Mr. Holden is going to explain what the federal government expects and how South Carolina is leading our charge to make sure that we are in compliance. You will see that there's very little local control over some of these decisions to be made, but Mr. Holden will be prepared to answer all those questions momentarily.
Well, I would just like to say, I know as a teacher, I'm really excited about this initiative, because if you teach in the older grade, I have 8th graders, but people that have them even up, especially middle school, and then 9th grade's the most, data shows that's where more people drop out, and it is because they can't read. And they become, so I just think it's an awesome program, but I've been worried how it would be implemented.
Absolutely.
But I think you're answering me. I'll stay tuned.
Well, this presentation Mr. Giuliano has just given to us is to combat just what you're concerned about, the lack of ability to read. So the work that we've done in the course of the last several years, and again, I'd like to applaud United Way, because they have certainly been a partner of ours, and because we've had such success, other districts in the Midlands have been able to replicate what we're doing. So to know that students have selected books and gone home, and to know that we've reached down to capture 2nd graders that are rising into 3rd grade, we're trying to prevent literacy issues before the gap gets too wide, so that when they do get the accountability model that Mr. Holden will be talking about momentarily, we have done preventative things rather than just reacting and recording data of achievement instead.
Well, the 59 students that you had in the camp, did you say they all were able to recoup that from the retention? I can't ask you that. Right?
Absolutely.
But I'm kind of curious, were they all at one school?
They were not.
Were
all
they
of
in
our
their
schools.
individual school where they attended for the school year? Is that where the camp was?
So our camp was housed at Harbison West Elementary School. Of those 59 students, they were represented from all of our elementary schools within the district. But we had camp at one location.
I got you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just had, you may have answered this. We identified 59 students. You talked about early in your presentation there were 7 exemptions that you could move on. Mm-hmm. Did we have students that we identified for whatever reason, couldn't attend the camp, and what are we doing in those areas to try to help them catch up?
That's actually a great question. What we're doing is we have reading intervention throughout elementary schools, and with those students that certainly could not attend the camp, we have defined plans that each student has at the school. Parents are involved with those plans, but our reading coaches and our reading interventionists work with those students throughout the year. So the second they come back to school, we're working with them. At the same time, we also offer different programs throughout the summer, and each school is unique where they offer opportunities to come into the school to receive some services, but then also do some activities at home as well. So each of our schools offers something unique in that area.
That's great. That's good. And the follow-up's coming in the fall, first day, probably.
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Giuliano, thank you for the Office of Instruction report. Next, I'm going to toss it over to Dr. Harris, our Chief of Planning and Administration, because the report comes now from his office, which has great excitement building around it already, Dr. Harris.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Melton, Mr. Gant, members of the board. And we're so happy to have Mr. Holden, who is here. He's also new in his role, coming from Chapin Intermediate School as principal, and to now our Director of Accountability. I affectionately refer to him as Director Holden. This has a great little ring to it, so I kind of like that. But Director Holden is here, and he is as excited about presenting to you as we are about talking about it. So I will, without further ado, regarding the new state accountability model and under the umbrella of the federally mandated Every Student Succeeds Act, we're going to turn the floor over to Director Holden.
Thank you very much, Dr. Harris. I'm excited to speak with you all this evening about the new state accountability plan that was just approved in May 2018. The new accountability plan focuses on a few key areas, and these areas are general, and they apply to K through 8 schools and also to our high schools as well. But the key things we'd like you to think about as we go through the presentation tonight is that the accountability model has 3 key areas: academic indicators, school quality indicators, and student success indicators, and that schools will receive ratings in each of those areas as well as an overall rating for the school based on the student's performance. The aim of the new accountability model is to ensure that students and schools are working towards the profile of the South Carolina graduate, and the goal here is to measure the school's effectiveness in developing students who are college, career, and citizenship ready. With that aim, there are a few key measures that are going to be used for our K through 8 schools. These are our elementary, intermediate, and middle schools. And what you'll see here is we're going to go through those academic, school quality, and student success indicators and talk about the specific measures that apply to each one. For our academic indicators in the elementary, intermediate, and middle levels, we've got student achievement, which is measured by our students' performance on SC Ready, English Language Arts, and Mathematics. We have student growth, also measured by students' performance on SC Ready, English Language Arts, and Mathematics. We have English language proficiency, which is only going to apply to schools who have 20 or more English learners in their school population. For our school quality indicators, which is what we were just discussing, there's the Advanced Ed Student Engagement Survey. And for our student success indicators, we have student achievement in SC Pass, Science, and Social Studies. And what we're going to do on the next slide is we're going to go through piece by piece and learn how much those are going to count in each school's final summative rating. As we go through these pieces, you'll see 2 distinct formulas. The reason there are 2 formulas for K through 8 schools, which again are elementary, intermediate, and middle, is because we have one formula that's going to apply to schools that have 20 or more English learners, and we have a separate formula that applies to schools who have less than 20 English learners. And what we'll see as we go through that next slide is the top line there is going to have the schools with less than 20 English learners, and the bottom line will have schools with 20 or more English learners. The first measure is academic achievement on SC Ready, and you can see that will count for 40% or 35% of a school's final rating. We have the academic growth of all students, which will count for 20 or 17.5% of a school's rating, again, depending on how many English learners are in the school. The next measure is the academic growth of students in the lowest quintile, which again is going to be 20 or 17.5% of a school's overall rating. The next measure is the English language proficiency. You'll notice this measure does not apply to schools who have less than 20 English learners, but it will count for 10% of the school's overall rating if they have 20 or more English learners. The final two measures will count the same no matter how many English learners are in the school. The first of those is the school quality indicator, which is the Advanced Ed Student Engagement Survey, which is a survey taken by all students during the school year, and that'll count for 10%, no matter how many English learners are in the school. The final measure is that student performance on SC Pass, Social Studies, and Science. That'll count for the final 10%. This is the formula that will be used for all schools, elementary, intermediate, and middle. The next part we're going to look at is for our high schools. And there are three main areas of focus, again, for high schools. We have the academic indicators, the school quality indicators, and the student success indicators. For academic indicators, you'll see things like the Algebra 1 and English 1 results on end-of-course exams. We have our graduation rate. Again, you'll see English language proficiency. That'll only apply, again, to students with 20 or more English learners. We have our school quality indicators, which is our Advanced Ed Student Engagement Survey, just like we had for grades K through 8. We have the student success indicators, and for those, we're looking at achievement on the biology and U.S. history end-of-course exams. And the last part will be college and career readiness, where the state has given 9 indicators of college and career readiness, and they're looking for how many of our students have met at least one of those 9 factors. The next slide will be similar to the one we looked at previously for grades K through 8. You can see that end-of-course tests will count for 30 or 25%. End-of-course tests in Algebra 1 and English 1 will count for 30 or 25% of a school's overall rating. The graduation rate will count for 30 or 25%. English language proficiency will count for 10% for schools that have 20 or more English learners. If the school has less than 20 English learners, it will not count. The Advanced Ed Student Engagement Survey counts the same no matter how many English learners are in the school, and it will count for 5% for our high schools. The end-of-course tests in U.S. history and biology count for 10%, and the final measure, which is the college and career readiness indicators, is going to count for 25%. All schools are going to receive ratings in each of those areas. Those ratings are excellent, good, average, below average, and unsatisfactory. Schools will also receive an overall summative rating: excellent, good, average, below average, and unsatisfactory. Here on the next slide, you can see just a breakdown of the indicators for K through 8 and for 9 through 12. The intent there was to give you that information all in one location. It does not have the specific weighting of each formula, but the key idea here is that for K through 8, we're looking at student achievement on SC Ready, Language Arts, and Mathematics. We're looking at growth on SC Ready, Language Arts, and Mathematics, English language proficiency, the Advanced Ed Student Engagement Survey, and SC Pass, Social Studies, and Science. For our high schools, we're looking at achievement on Algebra 1 and English 1 end-of-course exams, the graduation rate, English language proficiency, the Advanced Ed Student Engagement Survey, the achievement on U.S. history and biology end-of-course exams, and finally the college and career readiness indicators. In closing, just a few key pieces to go back to. The aim of this model is to ensure that we are preparing our students to meet the profile of the South Carolina graduate and that they are college and or career ready. And we have 3 key indicators that go through the K-12 continuum, and those are academic, school quality, and student success. The rating formula is going to be determined by the school's level. So is it an elementary, intermediate, or middle school, or is it a high school? And also by the number of English learners that are in the school. And the last piece that we should all be aware of is that schools will once again be receiving ratings from our state depending on their performance in those areas. This time, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. Yes, Ms. Baumgartner.
I noticed that you had a breakdown of 20 English learners or less in each school, but the school populations can be very different.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
mean, at a high school with 3,000 kids, it's much different than an elementary school with 200.
Yes, ma'am.
But yet the number is 20.
The number is 20 no matter how many students are in the overall population. That is correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Hammond.
Does this take the place of the, what we used to call a school report card?
These are the new
This is our
report
report
ratings.
card.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. And we
then-
haven't had those since 2014. This will be the first time we've had those since then. Yes.
But, Dr. Milton, you had said that there's, some of this is federal and some of this is state.
The premise of this is we have to be in compliance with the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education. So each state has to submit an accountability plan. So when Mr. Holden shared that, Director Holden, as Dr. Harris says, when Director Holden shared earlier that this was approved for the state of South Carolina in May, there had been several submissions and revisions. And so South Carolina's plan was approved then, but that doesn't mean every state was approved at the same time. Different ones have been approved at different paces. But that's when the plan for South Carolina was approved. So now Director Holden is going through the process of training administrators and community to make sure that we can understand it before it were to be released to the public once these calculations have been complete.
And I know you're going to do that. I just would say, I think that sometimes teachers are, you know, they're already in a field that they are working really hard to feel like in the classroom and the learning is how we are judged. So I think it's really good for us to get a handle on being able to explain how this excellent, good, average, because I could see it being perceived in different ways with every different maybe districts. And so I didn't know, you know, I think this is one of the hardest things. I know we're excellent in everything, but you know, seriously, I think to have some nuts and bolts for our faculty to know exactly how you are looking at it and how a school is judged, because our administrators, our principals, even our custodians, our bus drivers, they care how our schools are rated.
Absolutely.
And we know sometimes ratings maybe aren't fair, I guess I'm saying.
Absolutely.
But I'm excited about that we have something very concrete that they can understand and work toward being as good as we need this to be.
Our hope tonight was to bring this forward before its publication across the state. We want our board and our community to understand how to rationalize this system, not to answer questions about it, but just for you all to be informed. I celebrate Director Holden. Just last week, he trained all of our district administrators so that they could have an awareness of this, but we know that one time is not complete training. So Director Holden's in the process of going out to meet with each school team at each school so that he can answer questions about data literacy, but also the accountability system itself, because we want to prepare all of our administrators to then train and inform parent leaders, train and inform our teachers, so that when press releases are coming out and ratings are released, that we have a better conceptual understanding as compared to just a simple rating of a descriptor instead.
Thank you.
Director Holden,
Yes, sir.
I think after a few weeks on the job, you've got another title. That's great, man. I think it's very fitting, too. I like that.
Appreciate it.
Anyway, back to Ms. Baumgartner's question about the 20 English learners. Is that something that's state determined, or is that something that we?
Yes, sir. That was a state-determined measure.
Okay.
The ESSA did require that states address the English language proficiency, and that was the method by which our state chose to do it, was by setting that criteria of to include it must have 20 or more English language proficiency. I think it's an issue of sample size and ensuring that the sample size is adequate if we're going to reflect it in the overall rating for a school.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, Director Holden, we thank you for your presentation, your thoughtfulness. We know that we're in capable hands that care about each individual student's report and each individual school. So thank you to you and Dr. Harris both for getting this report prepared for us this evening.
Thank you all.
Chairman Gant, that completes my report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Melton. That brings us to our public participation.